for everyone being here tonight. This is an opportunity for a couple members of our Economic Development Advisory Committee who are working on a subcommittee on this topic to try to have a discussion with this group to get some clarification and some direction on one of the to-dos that they had coming into this year. So before we get into that, I'm not sure that everyone knows these members of EDAC, so if the three of you wouldn't mind introducing yourselves to the group.
Right, sounds good.
Steve Thompson. Do we need more?
No, that was Steve.
Like long walk on the beach.
I'm Randy Mitchell. I will say Steve is the chairman of the EDAC committee. I think that'd be fair to say, right? But the subcommittee is working on a particular topic that we're talking about. I'll be addressing, sharing some notes with you. We'll all be talking about it.
I'm Erin Shackman, also on that committee.
So do you want me to just set this up a little bit
Please
for
do,
you,
Becky.
maybe? Sure. So,
Does everybody know everybody else?
so we can go around the room, sure. I'm Betsy Hawk, the assistant town manager.
Renee Garner.
Ken McCool.
John Urban, I'm also on EDAC.
That's right.
John Higgin.
Jason Blotchett.
Hey, Plan.
And Jeff Miller.
Great. Okay. So going into this year, EDAC was tasked, as all of our board committees were tasked with, coming up with kind of 5 core items that they wanted to work on that went to the board. And this item came out of a prior planning conference where the board discussed the whole concept of whether or not Matthews was open for business. And it was left kind of broad, but the to-do was that they were the board at the time was interested in having EDAC assess, is Matthews open for business, or how open is Matthews for business? And so this subcommittee has taken on that task, and when we first got into it, we felt like this was going to be a survey, and we would just ask some questions and get some answers and be able to present it to the board, and then what the board wanted to do with it, they could do with it. But I think, as you'll hear, as we kind of quickly got into it, it quickly became pretty clear that that could go in many, many different directions and mean many different things. And so wanted to spend some time trying to ascertain this board's feelings on the topic, what that means to you, what success would look like at the end of the day, and what we're all trying to accomplish by having this information. So with that, I will turn it over to Randy.
Thank you, Becky. And Becky was an active member of this subcommittee also who looked at this issue as well. I included at the top just a review of what our purpose is on EDAC. Then it's to proactively promote a healthier business climate that enhances Greater Matthews by advising town officials, advocating for current businesses, and attracting new entrepreneurial ventures. So I thought it'd just be fair to just put, here's the main reason that we exist. There were 3 things we had identified we wanted to try and focus on in 2020, and that was coming out of also, as I understand, the past retreat of years past from the town council. Number 2, we have in bold, because that's the issue we wanted to come back and revisit with you then. Identify and develop a plan to analyze Matthews' current business climate, parentheses, how open for business are we, and make a proposal to the town board for support and funding. We sat down and started to tackle this. We felt like we knew what was intended here, and we started addressing how we were going to do this and who we were going to gear this towards. We were looking at doing a survey, maybe meeting with a subset of those folks that we surveyed. We're going to probably be talking with commercial developers, maybe commercial real estate experts, maybe some current business owners, maybe even benchmarking against other local towns such as Indian Trail, Stallings, Mint Hill. We sought some guidance from the Mecklenburg County Economic Development Group. Becky had talked with Chris Platte from Union County's Economic Development Group. We began to kind of become aware of some warnings about the scope of what we were trying to tackle, and wondering what will we be doing with this information once we do gather. Some of the warnings included, well, don't expect a very large response to any kind of survey, and the response that you get may be those who have negative things to say, and so if so, what will we do with that information then? So we wanted to back up and come to you and talk with you a little bit about that, maybe get greater clarity. One, is this still a focus for the new town council? And what would we intend to do with it? We know that business is important, and it's important to attract and retain folks, but the idea of trying to assess what our business climate is, we want to understand more what the intention might be, if it indeed is still a focus for this year. And if so, what is the intended scope? Do we intend to look at zoning issues as that pertains to business? Are we looking at certain geographic areas, the inner core, downtown versus all businesses? Are we focused on how do we retain the businesses that we have, or is this more about what are we doing to attract better businesses? So there's a lot in that, but that's what's behind us coming to you, to try and have little dialogues to give us maybe better clarity and direction as to whether to tackle this particular charge, and if so, the scope of that. So we are be interested in your feedback, direction, or thoughts on this kind of issue. Anything we want to add, Steve or Aaron?
I think the root of it is, if we are gonna spend the time to go after it, we wanna know that, A, are we going in the right direction? And at the root of it, is it attraction versus retention? And also with the underlying thought that if, once we do go after these, a lot of whichever populace we go after, or whichever group we go after, to try to ask, they're gonna look for something in response, and are we ready to, A, are we ready to hear the message? And are we ready to act on it before we go out and, because we're gonna have to talk to businesses, right? Or developers, or if we open up that dialogue. We just wanna make sure it's worth, if we're gonna point in that direction and go after it, we wanna make sure we're pointing in the right direction, and if we're ready for the response, and to take action, I guess, or do something with that. Commissioner Miller?
Thank you. I think that the most obvious opportunity that we have to solicit a business and bring it to town would be the repurposing of the Family Dollar two campuses. They have the north and the south. They both have independent ingress and egress, and a stoplight opportunity, so they could be marketed separately or together as one. Of course, you know, I'm sort of jumping the gun there, but I think the writing's on the wall that Dollar Tree will be looking to unload that. Or they would have retained more employees, et cetera. And the secondary location that this board has discussed, or past boards, was the former PCA building at Crestdale in 51, or Old Matthews Van Hill Road, across from Harris Teeter. Harris Teeter owns it. I understand it's a brown site where the soil or the ground may be tainted of some form. But Harris Teeter owns it and bought it, or rather primarily uses it for storage of some signage and marketing materials. And I don't think it's that important to them, but I don't work for Harris Teeter enough to say one way or the other. But those two could be repurposed into the next up-and-coming business, or think out of the box and what could it be.
Along with that, that Quebracho building, with the Mosaics moving out, there's gonna be several thousand feet of that building opening up right next to the PCA building. What I wanted to bring up was, we heard on the, as a reaction to the mobility study, a small but very local subset of business owners that felt like they weren't being made aware of planning decisions or whatever made in the town. I'm not trying to, that's what they said, right? That's a perception. I'm not saying that's necessarily true, but I'd be interested to know if business owners in our town think that we're involving them enough And we talked about this on EDAC for many years, like if you're building Mr. Urban's apartments right here, how might that affect, you know, Thai taste or whatever? We reached out to people and said, hey, we're doing this, and I don't know, is that something we could do a better job of?
That's something that you guys are required to do.
No, I don't think so, right? I mean,
Only if they're adjacent or within a
right,
certain.
yeah, if they're right next to, but I'm like,
So whether or not they want it, it's,
well, I'm thinking, you know, if I owned a business here, I guess they'd be made aware in the paper or whatever, but if you're building a large apartment complex, that could be potential customers. I might want to know about the egress and ingress and how it might affect my business. And are we doing the very best job we can to make business owners feel like they're included? And I don't think it's a requirement, but it'd be something nice to do if we have a small town.
for sure,
feel.
for sure.
I'd like to concur with Jeff. I think those 3 locations that we identified from the past board and for this board, we'd like to see if we can attract some business to come in there and regenerate some jobs back into the town. And all 3 of those locations that was mentioned, I think, provide a possibility. The building is there and excuse me, the infrastructure is there where they can move in and out, shipping and all. But from my point of view, I would like to see us, we see if we can get some business there. That we might could attract to come to town. Sure.
I think for me, one of the most basic questions is this board interested in assessing the climate for future business or current businesses?
Future business for me.
And I guess it's okay if it's both,
I
just
think
know
both.
that those are
Both would be
two
nice.
separate efforts. But I think hearing the consensus of the group on, is it both, is it one or the other, and which one would be the primary, which one would you want us to approach first?
I'd say future.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think what Jeff mentioned is, would clearly have to be the top priority, and then
Fail to plan, plan to fail type of thing.
But at the same time, I feel like if you get feedback from current businesses, you're going ahead and doing some of the footwork for attracting businesses. Be it positive or negative, at least you have that input and can, as we start attracting certain businesses, we can correct those or, you know, embellish them.
Well,
Either way.
it can help you understand what you're trying to sell, and if there are issues that need to be addressed before you go out and try to market. It's a different way to look at it. Yeah.
If the focus might be on the future businesses, we have a good climate to attract future businesses. Is the assessment of that going to be talk with the folks who have tried to bring businesses here in the past? And what did they think about the process they went through? Whether they were successful or not? Is that who we're talking about then?
I guess for me, I want to know, define the businesses that we're talking about. You know, are you talking about a 3-person operation? Or are you talking about some of these sites that are bigger are obviously hundreds of people? Something smaller than that, a 3-person or a 1-person business is, you know, I feel like it's harder for them because of real estate on some levels, but yeah. So what, I mean, I don't personally want to, I'm not a business person, so, you know, I don't have the mindset for it, but is that, what, as a group, were you guys talking about or visioning or?
I mean, we kind of had to start back from the beginning. I think for us understanding, just clarification on your guys' side, exactly what you guys are looking for, if you have that idea. And then springing off of that, and I think understanding, my personal opinion, obviously you guys are bored, you guys decide, but like understanding what those businesses that are here or the businesses who decided not to come here, those reasons for being here are what's going to drive future businesses to coming in or not coming in addition to the kinds of opportunities those current locations, the Family Tree, PCA building, all have there. I mean, not to jump the gun, but we don't know when Family Tree is going to be put on the market. We don't know if that's a 5-year plan, a 2-year plan, a 20-year plan with the light rail coming in, if they're holding on to that land, that kind of stuff. So to me, before we jump into future, I think it's important to kind of understand who is here in terms of that kind of.
Mr. Bland?
I would just like to say that, I think it's wonderful it is when you have a big player like Novant or like Family Dollar or somebody like that. I think that really small businesses are the backbone of this entire community. I mean, the Chamber of Commerce and all the different people. And I know when I first moved to Matthews many, many years ago, I mean, we killed ourselves trying to find a place to open a small 2-man law firm here in this town. There was no office space at all. And I just begin, maybe you guys tell me I'm wrong, but I think that what limits us more than anything else is the availability of, we got these several big sites, but those are hard things to fill.
Yeah.
Whereas there's a lot of people that want to come out here and do business in Matthews, and a whole bunch of people that like to live out here in Matthews. It's a great community and all those things, but it's a whole lot easier to attract smaller businesses than it is to attract behemoths like Family Dollar or something like that. Now, great, good work, but I think it's going to take a lot of effort to do that.
Commissioner McCool?
I kind of agree with Dave. I've talked to many people who say, well, I'd love to come to Matthews, but I go to Charlotte because there's just more space for a small business. I'd love to see the 900 jobs or whatever we lost from Family Dollar come back, but we got to kind of reverse engineer why companies are going to Charlotte and why they're not coming to Matthews. So I'd kind of like to see you guys reverse engineer and come back to us and say, well, here's what we're doing great and here's what we're doing wrong, and then we can move on from there.
The knock on Matthews years ago, and I haven't heard it recently, was that it was difficult to go through our planning process, that it was too arduous, that there was too many steps, that we took too long to approve stuff, and that the board kept pushing back and saying, no, we want you to do this, and they had to go back, and finally people just said, well, the heck with it, I'm not gonna put up with this, I'll go somewhere where it's easier. I haven't heard that much recently, but we did hear that for many years. You remember, Joe?
Yes.
John?
Yeah, I did too.
It's gotten a lot better because we were aware of it and we worked at it.
So I mean, from my perspective, I think what we're currently really good at is quality of life. So my primary focus has been, how do we make the town as great a town as it can be? And then you're gonna have this natural spin-off effect of people wanting to come here, because I do feel like, and we'll take obviously whatever direction comes from the board, but to get into the economic development business, you're talking serious dollars, and then like kind of what you were talking, what I've heard people call about on the elephant hunt. So what you do is you go out and find the big elephant, and there's maybe 10 that come to North Carolina. I don't know how many, there's a limited number. You're competing against lots of forces, cheap land, cheap labor, and I think what is interesting, like with the life, in many ways we have no control over the PCA building, Combraco. Family Dollar is essentially vacant, but it's on a light rail line. Is its best use going to be some kind of redevelopment that's got multi-uses in it? And then we have this limited inventory of land. I feel like if we were Mint Hill with a lot of extra land, could we think differently about, well, is this a business we want to get into? But I just want to give you staff's perspective. We are good at quality of life and providing things that make people happy. I think at the end of the day, business, particularly big business, what's in my interest? I don't care how pretty you look. I'm making big, important, expensive decisions, and I think it's very hard for economic developers to influence that. And that, they're probably, I don't know, $125,000 a year jobs with limited experience. So I think it is a heavy lift. I do think the small business is an interesting component, because you can see those guys attracted to that small town quality of life thing, and like, I want to do this, or I want to, but my guess is we still have a shortage of office space. But isn't the market dead on office space? Somebody said, Jay said, office space is not hot right now.
I don't think
Retail.
they're building a lot, is what I've heard him say. But
There's open office space.
Okay, good.
One thing to think about too is the elephants, as you refer to them, there already is organizations in the Charlotte metro area that are going after that, right? That we support, that So I don't know if it makes sense for us to not compete, but try to fill their shoes, right? They're searching for location, and I'd be willing to bet the 3 places that we're talking about, minus Oak Creek and Bracco, are on their list, places that they're searching for. The other thing with small business is it's a symbiotic relationship, right?
Yeah.
Similar to an attorney. You can't have a town with only one attorney. You have to have 2, right? Just by nature of the law. So if you have one small business, you're gonna have naturally other small businesses pop up to feed each other. So, and then it comes down to if we're gonna attracting one large one, like we'll use the hospital as an example. How many businesses here in town actually feed the hospital? It's very few because they're contracting with large, multi-state, much larger. But if you take grab anybody out of a Matthews Chamber luncheon, one person, they probably have 9 other people in that lunch that they're doing business with. So they're very, not incestuous, but they're intertwined. One drives another, right? So I think if you're gonna grow the number of businesses, you're better off grabbing one small one, because that'll add to it, the multiplier will be 2 or 3 versus a huge, somebody like in Bracco or just a thought. But in terms of the discussion of whether we go after, back to where do we want to focus on in terms of a survey, it sounds like.
Or if a survey
is
is
even the
a-
right thing we want to do, right?
Yeah, one of our concerns is asking the right questions of the right target audience and being prepared to do something with what we hear. And originally, Mayor, we were looking at that idea of, well, we think the issue is the planning and the criticism that's coming. But if that's perceived as no longer
I haven't heard the
a high
complaints.
issue, then that's not where we should focus our time then, probably.
I think something that all of us that are elected officials heard when we run for office is we want more high-paying jobs in Matthews. We don't want more, people slinging beers and making hamburgers. We want some high-paying jobs. How do we attract those? I don't know. I'm sure everybody in this room heard that multiple times.
I asked this question, I just want to clarify. Did we say that we cannot offer incentives like tax breaks if a big company come here and said, I want to set up something? Is that true or what?
So we can and we have a policy to offer incentive grants.
We can and we do have.
Well, we've only offered it to one well, it was the headquarters of Dollar Tree, and it was kind of a shell game. They weren't really serious, but we were prepared to bring it to the board to say, here's how we could rebate them.
Okay.
But they.
And I said that for y'all, if you see a company that say bring 150, 200 jobs, to maybe they look at one of these sites, and I just want to make sure we're in position, because I think Valentine has just captured a lot of big businesses, and we're only 15 miles from there. I just feel like some of these companies, I think we got something to offer here too.
Sure.
And I would like to see a company say looking for a place to land and that we can attract. They bring some jobs back into downtown. And when I say in Matthews, not so much downtown, but in Matthews. But at the same time, small businesses is good too.
Sure.
You gotta. I think you gotta have a balance of both.
Yeah.
But we have lost. We lost a devastating. So, and I know that Dollar Tree, they have to run this business, and I understand that. They know the light rail might be coming close to us, so they want the best they can get for it. But I do think that they would be open to some kind of option if somebody is interested in purchase for a long time.
Sure.
No, we're not really brainstorming particular ideas, but I would like to mention that I remember Raleigh, North Carolina, set up their farmers market about the size of Matthews, 35 years ago, and it's become a huge economic driver for the town. It's open 7 days a week. It's probably 40 times the size of our farmers market. It has furniture stores, restaurants, crafts, pottery, bars. I mean, it's this huge, huge complex that attracts a ton of people and a ton of money to the town, and that's, you know, I think something like that would be something people here would enjoy. I don't know how high-paying the jobs would be, but.
It definitely increases quality of life and keep that small town feel without its, with still having a large impact.
And when you talk about incentives, I know that BMW in South Carolina, I think they're gonna pay till like, nothing, 5,000 years to pay for that plant being built there. I mean, they gave them everything, gave them the land, no taxes for 150 years, or whatever, they don't pay half of your salary or
And
more.
gave all the state, street BMWs to drive police cars to.
Commissioner Urban, you've been quiet. What's on your mind, sir? You've got a lot of notes there.
We've been talking about this for 20 years.
I know, you're good. He's right, he's right.
I mean, I think I mentioned this in the planning conference, and Hazen just reiterated it. Government should be in the business of providing the life safety services and establishing the catalyst for businesses to thrive. And what we do is the quality of life issues. And I think that's really important. We're not in development business. We shouldn't be acquiring land to become developers. But I think if we're looking for something, EDAC could definitely be looking at, you know, we should be preparing small area plans. We should be looking to the future. The light rail is going to be a game changer. We do not understand the enormity of the situation, but if you look at South Boulevard and the numbers,
Yeah.
that is 10 years away, just give or take. That in itself is a very short period of time in the life of town's life.
That was a very depressed area in Charlotte.
And so you may want to just be preparing, because you won't need to be worrying about seeking businesses and things like that. You may be preparing and setting up and queuing up the golf ball and the tee a little bit. So I would be cautious about that. I think to your point, you mentioned the property owners, and I had some follow-up meetings. There is a disconnect. I don't know what the disconnect is, but there are business owners, there are property owners, and there are the residents and everything else in between. And they all engage the town at different levels. And we haven't been able to sort of put them all in one pot and stir it all together and everybody's sitting on the same page. Whether you're for something or against something, it doesn't matter, but you're all sort of, you know where to go, who to talk to, and how it all sort of distills. I think that's the weakest link, because there's a lot of infill, there's a lot of opportunities for small businesses and property owners to be engaged and be aware of or apprised of the value they are to the community, and vice versa, you know, how they can help the community as well. I mean, I just think there's so many low-hanging fruit things that could be done. Shooting for a Fortune 500 company is not one of them. I think, Steve, you're right. The small businesses is the diversity in your portfolio. And right now, everybody's, if they're diverse, they're going, I'm good. But if you got all your eggs in one basket, that's a bad thing. And as it happened with Family Dollar, that's not a good thing. The silver lining in the Family Dollar site is that it's sitting on the rail line, and that, in my vision, 20 years from now, is a beautiful
High potential.
facility, mixed use, affordable housing components, fintech, live, work, the whole 9 yards. And it's just another component to Matthews that makes it great from that aspect of it. So I think there's some circling back, and we've talked about this, talking to not only existing business owners, but existing property owners, business property owners, about the context of where we're at, because we don't have product, is the other thing. So what do we do? You know, what's the next step? We have some good local developers, we have some regional developers I think we could tap and talk to. You know, Lat is re-looking. He's reached out and said, you know, I'm always loved Matthews. I sort of neglected it, which I think he would attest to, is probably been the case for a while. But the office market, it's like everything. It's down the street. To Larry's point, Ballantyne is old news. Ballantyne is completely going to be turned on its head and turned into a lifestyle center, and its density is going to quadruple from the business park scenario. Waverly is only a few miles away from us, so the pressure is on. And again, that's probably that 5-year window versus the Family Dollar 10-year window. So I think it's preparedness more than anything about what do we want to do and how we want to do it, and what does the community as a whole want to do, so we can begin, like Kathy English did 20 years ago, making those plans. And when it came down the pipe, the developer knows the rules for which we play, and it fits into the context of the town.
Talking about the 74 in particular, how we
Yeah.
built that
Yes.
parallel road system so they
Yes.
could easily.
Had we not had that arranged, we would be in really dire straits.
And one thing that came to light from our meetings with, most recently with the mobility plan folks, but other prominent land and business owners in Matthews, is that a lot of them are older, and they don't use Facebook Live, and they don't use TikTok and Snapchat and whatever other social platforms that I don't even know what I'm talking about. I'm too old to understand that stuff, but they don't do that. You can't reach those. You're not going to reach Frank Williams Sr. on Facebook because he doesn't have a Facebook account and never looks at it. So we have to think of other ways to reach those folks. And we have quite a few prominent landowners that are older that I suspect aren't, you know. My parents are 86 and 85 and they're on Facebook, but I think they're kind of unusual.
And John, what you brought up there might suggest focusing more on the developers, the commercial real estate folks, to say, what do we need to do as a town to be more prepared for what's coming?
Yes.
Could that be more of the question and the focus?
Because I think the idea of a regional economic development person from a quad standpoint makes a lot of sense.
Sure.
Quad standpoint.
But they also still have a product. Well, what they could be doing, it could be a promotional campaign for the quality of life of the area.
Yeah,
But in the end game, a company is looking for product.
right.
They're looking for land. They're looking for something built.
Yeah.
And your middleman, the broker in this deal, is really your developers.
Yeah.
We can't do that heavy lift. We don't have a person to do it. So you find that middleman in there who's got his ears to the ground, sitting there going, I've got some full-service hotel providers. They may not be looking here today, but based on your plans for the sportsplex, we could be looking tomorrow.
Right.
And having, it's time to roll. It's to roll up the sleeves and constantly be in contact with everybody.
Yeah.
Don't just think you can pick up the phone on day one and get a response. You got to constantly be in contact with them. The whining and dining aspect of it, the communication, the talking, rolling up the sleeve, and just knowing two-way communication. And so when the time comes, you've had those contacts.
So we're not showing up as strangers when we're having to
Correct.
make a proposal or something.
Another point to Commissioner Urban's comment is if a Fortune 500 company were to land in Mint Hill, because they have a lot of land, it's still going to benefit a lot of people in Matthews.
Yes.
There'll be a lot of people from Matthews that are going to work there. So it's not necessarily bad just because it's in our neighbor's yard. So that's why I like the idea of having a quad aspect to it. Maybe we don't have the land, but we've got the quality of life and
You
some infill opportunities and whatever else.
It seems like that, back to what Jeff said at the beginning of the future focus and these large properties that we have, that's a way of bridging that, but talking with the developers or real estate folks about what we need to do to be prepared and their assessment of how prepared we are for those things and the things related to those projects that will be coming. Related to meaning the small business angle as well. Does that seem appropriate? Rather than we're surveying all business owners out there, we're focusing on those folks who be at the forefront of these development opportunities?
Because it's always changing.
Mhm.
I mean, the business owners, really frankly, you're setting your way, your standard operating procedure, it's a much narrower band than the other folks in this world,
Yeah.
from the development standpoint.
Right.
They're my business, you have to move. I mean, it's multifamily, and then it moves back to townhomes, it's all medical, and you've got to be nimble and pliable, and that's what the developer market is looking for the next big thing. Business owners are more in tune to, how do I survive? Is that not a more accurate statement?
The dilemma for boards, though, is, developers and property owners can come to the board and look for easy money. And I think about the intersection, the Yandle property, which is on the south side of 485, particularly on the, CPCC side of the tracks there. And, I don't know, 6 months ago or so, we had a developer that wanted, and it was a shopping center basically, and it seemed like easy to do. He can get in and out, and I think the danger is, should the board think about, okay, well, what do we need for 20 years? Because we got limited land, what's going to be in the best interest of the community 20 years from now? And we just need to be patient because, you got the 6th busiest airport, whatever, 30 minutes away, and is the office market going to work its way around 485 and come to that quadrant? You just got to be patient because the developers are going to come to y'all wanting to do retail because it's easy and they get big, good money per acre. So, y'all will continue to get that pressure.
Yeah, I suspect Dollar Tree's sitting on that piece of property because they know it's worth a ton.
They'll sit on it for 5 years at least.
Because, like you said, South End, I mean, we're talking billions of dollars of development.
It's got to be appreciating about 10% a year. They can't find anything that let it sit on the balance sheet.
So, another point, and Steve, I know it's something we looked at, and Randy and John, years and years ago, is when we did do surveys, we were looking at, for those smaller companies that add to the quality of life of Matthews, we were asking them, what can the town do to help you? I don't know where that ever went, or what, did you recall? I mean, what can we do to make your life easier as a small business owner in Matthews? What does that town do?
So back in 2010, the Charlotte Chamber of Commerce had a bunch of us members go out and survey with the exact same message going out. And it was an absolute disaster for those of us who were the surveyors. I still get calls from people that I sat in front of.
My pipe's not fixed.
Exactly. And that was kind of one of the impetus for us saying, what is your appetite for hearing the answer, guys?
What we're gonna do about it.
Because if you go out and ask the business owners, what do you want, what do you need? You have to have an answer. And I don't know that our heroes on the EDAC committee were volunteers with limited time.
Want to go down that path again?
I'm hesitant myself after having gone through the Charlotte one. It was brutal. And Charlotte the chamber took a dramatic hit for that one.
Well, I think we need to look at things that we can actually influence. If a business owner says, yeah, my window's broken, can you fix that? I mean, no. I mean,
But I'd imagine here, traffic.
Traffic, parking.
There are way too many bars. Anything out there that you can possibly think of.
Well, they're going to lump us in with government. Right?
Exactly.
State,
Oh, yeah.
federal, local government, and they don't know, like, state maintained road, they don't want to hear that
They don't wanna hear that.
spiel,
Nope.
right?
For fear of it sounding flippant, are you sure you want to know the answer? That was the.
Well, how do we propose this survey? Is it paper, is it digital, is it a combination of each, or is it a personal?
I think it
Or do
depends
we
on
even
the-
do it? What I'm hearing, I'm wondering if, and again, our heroes on the committee, we're volunteers, we have limited time. If a year from now, could success look like a document, however many number of pages, with maps or whatever, that takes basically the town of Matthews, pulses it up into zones, and then through discussions with land developers, possible users, current business owners in each of those zones, and saying, with the notion that there will be light rail coming, right? And there are some other developments coming on. Look forward, what do the developers, the current business owners, maybe residents in those areas, and come together with a formulation of this is kind of the consensus of what that zone within Matthews could look like or would like to look like, and then that's a document for you guys. Perhaps it's a living document, it keeps getting evaluated for 2 or 3 years, and then allows you to look at if somebody comes into Family Dollar and says, we're gonna put in more gas stations, and
More.
is that really what you want there? And then you have at least a document to guide you and say, well, we've talked to developers, we've talked to the landowners, in the past, and maybe it doesn't fit, or maybe this is a slam dunk sportsplex, holy cow. The W wants to put in a huge hotel that fits.
That could be, I mean, I like that idea of, it could be some focus zones, geographic zones, and it could be the businesses around Family Dollar site or other sites, and we're serving the businesses around there, but also the developers who know about the potential there to address the issue. How, more focused questions of how prepared do you believe Matthews is, and what do we need to do to be more prepared for these zones?
And we already have some small area plans and some overlay districts already.
Sure.
Right, so. Piggyback on
And we did talk about doing a small area plan for Family Dollar area.
Rather than trying to survey the entire Matthews community of businesses of all sizes, more focused of a few geographic areas.
Well, I've served on EDAC for many years, and I know the frustration is that we kind of been asking these guys to boil the ocean, right? And it's just, yeah, go do all this stuff. Get back to us. I think, what is the consensus of this board? What do you want them to do? I think we need to give some focused direction, because we haven't had it in a long time, so.
It'll make Jay's camp's head spin, but Becky can chime in here a little bit. But small area plan is a policy piece from two-dimensional and horizontal planning exercise. It would be interesting to bring sort of socioeconomic attributes to it that we're talking about, input and feedback from businesses and property owners and things like that. That would be an interesting filter or layer into a small area plan. Because all staff will do is when we think that fintech goes here and multifamily goes here and things like that, and there's a rhyme and reason. But then if you had another confluence of information that is not normal in planning channels, I mean, I'm talking, this is 30,000 feet up here. Jay's probably like, what the heck did you do to me? It is interesting to be able to sprinkle in a different dynamic that may change the substantive value of that small area plan. Does that make sense? Small area plans are really done in a vacuum from a planning standpoint. They have no corollary information that feeds into it, except we kind of look from a Minicozy standpoint, tax value or whatever, but we never really looked at it from an economic development aspect of it, or the economics of it.
We do have public input sessions in the small area plan. I think one of the hard parts is getting people's attention. It's just hard, okay, I've been working 10 hours today, now you guys want me to come sit here for 3 hours while you jabber at me and listen to me a little bit. And it is hard, in my experience, to get folks to the table that we're talking about. I know we're committed to trying.
Right.
Now, I think the mayor's point is an interesting one, throw it up on social media, put it in the paper, and then we feel like we've done our job. Maybe we really haven't done our job, but I do know it is still hard to get people in the room until, there's a rezoning sign out there or something imminent. It is, in my experience, hard to get people engaged.
But it's a little softer pedal if you've got EDAC and groups and volunteers that sort of sit around a table, let Randy soften them up a little bit with the what ifs and things like that. A little lunch kind of thing, more convenient times, not feel like you're stressed, not feel like you gotta be into it for 3 hours. And maybe you just have to hit it, and you gotta wait a few months, and you gotta come back and hit it again, and it's just sort of like getting to know your neighbor aspect of it. I don't know, but I guess to Charlie's point, you always do what you always done, blah, 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 and maybe some point we just have to sort of say, well, we tried all this. What's the harm in doing this? We're not making any commitments from the aspect of what is, you're gonna be bringing water and roads and building buildings kind of thing. But it's also engendering more feedback, and I think that goes part and parcel to the discussions I've had in the last couple of weeks with property owners and business owners. All right, you want us to engage you? We'll engage you, but it's reciprocal.
Yeah.
And if I find out that you're not gonna reciprocate, then I'm gonna move on.
Yeah. Just letting people know that they're being heard.
Yeah.
Yeah, to Hazen's point, and Renee, you may have been there, but I think it was one of the CARPO meetings, they were talking about a section, I believe, of 74, and they solicited public comments for 6 months, and the guy was all excited, this engineer stood up and said, we had 3 people write comments. I'm like, 3 people for this $3 billion project? Because people are just so apathetic, they don't take the time, whatever, just build the roads.
Well, no one feels like their voice is actually going to be heard. So why are you going to participate?
Sorry. They're apathetic until you do something, and then they raise the roof. They don't like
But it was funny to me as a new timer that this guy was excited because 3 people commented. Wow, that's awesome. Good job.
Well, I think what could be fun is to use the small area plan here at Family Dollar, maybe as a test case, because it's on the to-do list that the board will look at tonight. And is there a way to do it a little differently? And we have just different personalities in place too now, by the way, at the staff level. And then figure out what's the healthy role that doesn't sink y'all in a bunch of time, but helps us bring businesses to the table. It's coming from y'all as opposed to us, who they hear from all the time. Maybe that can bring a different flavor. And I guess you don't stick to just that area. Maybe you think, how do you expand the ring to get more folks at the table? I don't know if it's Brewster's Ice Cream, or maybe it's people along John Street or something.
There needs to be some sort of partnership with CATS and the transit-oriented design people that they're bringing too, because I feel like there may be some, it would be a shame to go out and do all this work and then have another group come in and say, well, actually, you should have done it this way, so not to kill the excitement, but maybe another area, or just make sure that there's some discussion with the CATS specialist on that.
Because they may be off doing their own thing right now, and they're gonna just come to us one day and say, here's your TOD.
No, they said they're gonna set up meetings with us to have talks, so maybe you guys are in the room for those meetings, or I don't know.
Just open meetings, so.
Can I just ask a question? Did Jay advise us to hold off on this more? Okay.
I was about to say, he did.
Jay advised us to hold off because so many things are in flux, including like a trail, rail to trail, or whatever, be a trail that would go in that area.
Hold off on what?
Hold off on the small area plan because there's so many unknowns, and there's going to be a 15% design of the Lynx line, I think within 18 months.
Yeah, they were working on, the board has taken a stance on the preferred alignment, but CATS needs to essentially agree on what the preferred alignment is going to be, and until that's agreed upon, there was really no point in doing a small area plan in that
I don't want it to sit for 2 years though and do nothing.
Well, we could have talked to Jay, is there kind of like a bones of a plan you could put in place and then refine it or sharpen it when we get better plans on location of small area, the light rail?
We need to know as well, Industrial Drive that curves behind East Restaurant and feeds a few other small businesses on a map. If that connects to the Galleria Boulevard, that becomes a useful street. But if the rail line crosses that, does it now become a flyover, a tunnel, or what's going on now? Or does that become a dead end? You know what I mean, Industrial Drive?
It's good, because the intention is to come down Monroe Road about where the storage buildings are. You would take a relatively sharp turn towards 74. I don't know what happens to Industrial Drive. Do you fly? You probably do fly over, because you got to fly over the railroad as well.
Yeah, it'd be a fly.
But that's expensive. Those bridges are expensive. But it's still an unknown.
Those Industrial Drive buildings are right up to the.
Right to right on.
There's not a lot of room.
No, but if it continues to go to the Galleria,
Yeah.
it would be a, marketable, but more important feeder route and alternative to Monroe Road.
So as direction, can we say, let's look at a bare bones? I personally don't think that the path of the Silver Line is gonna dramatically change. I think they're kind of locking in, aren't they?
I think in there, I don't know if they may decide whether it's going to go in the middle of the road or on the Family Dollar side.
It's not like they're gonna move it a half mile or a mile this way, or there's no place else to put it.
Right, I can't imagine it would be.
So I think with some certainty, we can, make some assumptions. I know what happens when you assume, but we can make some assumptions.
Or the other is, like I was saying, it's a living document, right?
Yeah,
So,
change it.
hey, here's the assumptions that this is based on, that these meetings were had using these assumptions, and what's the vision for 2030?
I think our plan would be,
2030.
our objective would be, we'll outline, based upon the direction we get here, we'll outline what we think this would look like and come back to you before we'd actually execute something to say, here's what we're planning on doing. Does this look right and consistent with what we've talked about?
But did we just make all this clear as mud to you?
No, it's, I can see through some pockets of the mud, yeah. You? What do you think? Yeah. I,
Nothing to do with zoning, don't touch that.
Not doing surveys.
Not those.
not doing surveys, not doing, it's a little more of, potentially some small group discussions, plus maybe some one-on-one interviews with some key players in the development side. Is that going on here, maybe?
So clearly, this is not enough work for you guys, so.
Yeah, yeah. it's-
But I still think another component, we've got to look at, and we've talked about a business, a small business incubator, or something, we've got to be looking at something to attract some jobs here. I don't want to just say, well, woe is me, we don't have much office space, let's just forget it. I mean, there's got to be some small startups, we've seen some great successes with small businesses. I mean, what can we do to attract some more of those jobs here, or at least to the area? I don't want to just brush it under the rug, because it's very important. People just kept saying that. What did we say? What was the result? How far do people drive? You may know. People drive 30 miles or something every day to go to work. What was the number? I forgot what it was, but it was.
You mean for our local?
Yeah, for people from Matthews drive really far away to go to work. And most of
27
them.
minutes is the average commute.
27 minutes each way. That could be a mile, or I should say that. But I think the intent was that was several miles. Wouldn't it be great if people could drive to Mint Hill or around the corner or walk to work or?
I think the key is space, right? I mean,
Well, Steve said we have some office space.
We have office, but no warehouse, or industrial.
Let me ask, have you ever had a job fair in Matthews?
I know.
In
CPCC has one,
Yeah.
and an organization.
they have had one, just to see what people want, or maybe jobs that want to come and tell them, this is what we got, and small, and that would fit into small area plan as well too. Maybe small business, but then again, you can leave it open too. Is this is what we got, and see what they're interested in. Maybe a one-day job, but just to let them come and share with y'all what they would like to see come in Matthews.
Is there anybody that has an inventory of what spaces are available? I guess it's probably some companies probably have it. It's
Used to.
Yeah.
Who are the people that keep track? I mean, if we said, we'd like
We
to
used to
know
have
how
business
much office
licenses.
spaces we have available and how much industrial that we got available, how much, I mean, is there a number that you could, just sort of rough estimate?
I'm gonna just toss over to Becky, because we wrestle with that too. We want to try and get a scope of, well, how do we find out how many businesses are here?
Yeah.
It's a challenge to do.
Well, how many are here or what's
Available. In other words,
Available.
like if a law firm or a
Yeah.
doctor's office or insurance company or whoever else, the developer.
Yeah,
I think your best.
Any of them want to come in here, and they say, I need 5,000 square feet, or I need, how do we know
Sure.
what's available?
so at one point in time, before my tenure, staff tried to keep a database for the community's benefit. That was, my understanding, very time consuming, very hard to keep up to date. We moved to a paid model that we could insert that into our website. That company got sued for infringement on, I guess they were copying what someone else had the rights to. So they went out of business. So that went out, so that went away. The company that sued them, we investigated going with them, but it was more expensive. But what was more troubling than that was even they did not have a comprehensive list. So it's a paid service. So if you want to list your property, you are paying them to list the property. It's not like residential MLS, that if your house is on the market, every house that's on the market is on the MLS. It's a different model in the commercial and industrial space, is our understanding of it. So it didn't feel like a comprehensive enough solution to justify the cost of putting it on the website. So we don't have one presently. We have not been able to find an alternative that we felt would be both cost effective and comprehensive enough to move forward.
The commercial real estate market doesn't have an MLS requirement. So because of, and most brokers, they live and die by who they know, what their inventory. So what you generally will have, there's LoopNet is growing to be one of the biggest ones, but most of those, it's about 80% accurate, because most brokers, they'll wait about 60 days, they'll bleed through their own kind of Rolodex, then they'll post on LoopNet to start getting others coming in. And usually stuff is on the market only for 95 to 100 and then, but at any time, LoopNet I've found, LoopNet from the commercial side is about 80%, give or take.
And LoopNet was who we looked at, but we also ran into some issues, it's been a while, but there were some issues with also being able to geographically condense in a way that we were just showing Matthews and not just
We
showing.
gathered a lot of other locations. We couldn't manipulate it to our benefit, is the bottom line.
Yeah.
So, just change the subject slightly, but just in the short time that I've been mayor, I've talked to tons of municipal and civic groups, and one of the questions I like to ask is, how many people in the audience were born and bred, you know, from Matthews? And it's usually one or two people in any, I don't know, how many in here are from Matthews, anybody? Ken, Renee, well, we got, this is higher than normal.
We can now.
So, I guess my point is that what's frustrating to me is, you know, having recently had children go through the school system here, is I see the best and brightest kids from our high school graduating and they leave. You know, and we've had kids go to Harvard and Yale and all kind of stuff, and they don't come back to Matthews to get a job. They go to Boston or Cleveland or San Francisco, so.
I think you just offended Renee.
We're not the best and brightest, John.
I'm sorry, particularly talking about, well, I guess I can't even say it about Ken, I'm gonna say young people, I can't get out of this, okay? But seriously, I mean, there's not a lot of people that are coming back to Matthews. Present company.
But it's an interesting point, but I think about all the people from Buffalo and Cleveland, I mean, Lord knows where they want to come from. And I think our niche, 25-year-olds, you know.
This is the bomb, man. This is where you want to be, Matthews, baby.
That's why we moved here.
28105,
You gotta
man.
get on Snapchat and like do
Snapchat,
selfies and
TikTok,
like, here's what I'm doing.
I think
That's on Facebook.
we kind of talked about this in the planning conference just very briefly, but my age group, a lot of people who were born and raised in Matthews want to go to like higher density. They just want to they want to go to downtown Charlotte. They want to walk everywhere. And so, like from a kind of a planning, I know we're going on a tangent, but people they don't really like the suburb feel for some reason. Young people, I don't know why that's me. I love the suburb feel.
Well, not until you have kids.
Exactly.
You're in that position. I mean, I was the same way. I was in Hoboken in New York City, and you don't want a car when you're 25. It's another payment you have to do. You're not making a whole lot of money after 2008, let me tell you. Like our generation.
2022.
What?
And 2022.
Well, exactly, yeah, after today.
Yeah, after the day. Yes,
But
almighty.
those kinds of things where you can cut down on all of your expenses, walking's a huge deal. And, I mean, but once you have kids, you don't want to be in an apartment with one bedroom and.
I didn't want to be in the same house with my kids.
I think making Matthews a walking town is probably never going to happen, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, well, yeah, you're just seeing a lot of young people moving away, but then you also are starting to see people, they move away until they're about 30 and they have a family and they're like, hey, we'll go back to Matthews because this was also the rate we
Right.
grew up in.
And I do think the board gets a lot of credit for recognizing, not just being, we want some, half-acre lots and we don't want anybody else, so maybe we're not as hip as we could be, but we're not terrible. You know?
We're not as terrible.
Matthews, we don't suck.
Oh, yeah, that's a bumper sticker.
As my young people say,
That's an endorsement
as my young people say, we're not a lit town.
I mean, to be honest, I think people going away from Matthews is always a good thing, because when people come back, they're bringing bigger and better ideas.
Sure. Not seeing a lot come back. No, that's the problem.
Yeah.
Oh, there's plenty of people moving here, though. Plenty. Hazen, I have a question for you. At the turn of the year, right after the election, we were talking about doing a citizen survey. Generally, that takes the form of paper and online. Is that accurate? Wouldn't it be safe to say that EDAC could submit a few of their questions?
That's a great idea.
Into our citizen survey, and, you know, maybe the citizen survey could be categorized in, you know, business and other categories. What do you love the most?
I think that's a great idea.
So we did switch, Dr. Friday retired.
Mhm.
So we are moving to a different format with Western Carolina was who we found to be the most cost effective. We can certainly change some of the questions or add a couple of questions, but they do a randomized mailed sampling. So whereas before it was, you just promoted it, as many people as you could get to submit, that was who submitted. So theirs is a little bit more statistically accurate, where it's truly randomized. It will go out to, I can't remember how many they were gonna mail it out to, and then you just get how many back. So how many of those folks are, you know, in business or have a business or anything like that, we wouldn't have any control over who it went to.
But
Have
you,
those questions been decided?
yeah, looks like, does staff look at the questions?
We're doing it in the fall, so we determined the questions, but they were gonna work with us on some, they worked with us on some recommended tweaks, but then they also recommended paring down the number of questions to make it easier for folks to respond.
My frustration with that survey has always been, okay, people want low crime, walkable, friendly. It's like, yeah, no duh. I mean, it just seemed like Captain Obvious questions. You think, you know, I mean, I'd like to see the questions get deeper.
Can you give an example of a type of question that you'd like to see?
You know, what kind of businesses do you frequent in Matthews and why? Or something like that. I'm just saying, I mean, asking a question, I mean, it seems to me that people are always going to say public safety and crime and small town feel and walkable. I mean, that's what we get every time. It's the same results every time. And it's not no surprise. I mean, that's what everybody wants. So it's almost like, why do you even ask that? I mean, I guess you have to ask the question to some prioritization, but it just seems, I'm sure I could come out, like, off the top of my head, I can't get some really deep
Well,
questions, but I'm sure I could.
improving roads, will you be willing to pay
Right.
1 penny, 2 penny, 3? I mean, you're gonna
Yeah,
have to
stuff
sort
like
of the
that.
what ifs, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, more hypothetical.
And sidewalks.
Make them
There's-
conscientiously understand the parameters from that standpoint, because otherwise everybody's gonna say, yeah, we want it. But if you want it, and this happens, then do you really still want it?
Yeah, we can bring the questions back to the board. It's not scheduled to happen until the.
'Cause I remember-
But to make sure that there's not something that needs to still be added.
I mean, the questions, I mean, obviously, and what is the study called, psychometrics or whatever, not whatever, I'm sure I'm using the wrong word, but you can ask a question and get a predetermined answer, right? I mean, do you really think you should waste your tax money on stupid sidewalks? Yes, I mean, you're gonna lead the outcome of that question, so I don't think we were that obvious, but some of them
Like the question.
kind of
Led the
led
answer.
what the outcome is gonna be, and and the answer was as you would predict.
We get comments though, and the comments can be very helpful and insightful.
I agree.
Maybe the comments
just-
are more
I
useful.
guess the other thing I guess I'd add is maybe we could add a business component and figure out, like, you know, businesses, we go to the tax record, could we randomly select, you know, 100 businesses? But those aren't business, those are the property owners, those don't, you know, probably not the business owners, as a matter of fact. I don't know if we, you know, take a couple shopping, I'm trying to figure out how logistically do you get to.
What type of businesses would you like to see in Matthews?
So Hazen, I do have from the county, because of this question, I do have every business that pays business-related taxes. So that gets to your business operator, not just the property owner. So it's actually the folks operating the businesses. So but it's just mailing addresses. So it's just the physical mailing address for it is what we have.
You can try it.
From a survey perspective, it might be worth, like, towards the bottom of the survey, so that you're not overwhelming people, is to ask if they want to answer questions about business. This is primarily a citizen, from what I understood. So you might be able to do it that way, so that you're not overwhelming and adding too many more questions. That way you'll get more questions from, like, you can ask more questions about business if you ask them if they want to. Most people, once they're in a survey, they'll say yes, if it's digital, which I think.
I know that they're mailing paper, and then I believe there was gonna be a
Okay.
website that you could go to if you wanted to.
From a paper perspective, that might not work, but digitally, that might be another option to get more business-oriented
So
questions.
we can look at how some business questions might make sense to incorporate into it. And that's this fall then.
Yes, but I guess I'm trying to understand, are we asking it from a consumer standpoint of what they would like to have, or are we asking it from a, if you operate a business, here's these questions?
I think probably both, but I think it would be really good for EDAC to have in their arsenal if 50% of our citizens said, we'd really like to have a bookshop in Matthews. Might be able to attract a bookshop, for example, to come to Matthews if we had that kind of data. Possibly.
have one. That's okay.
And one of the things they talked about, I guess at the MTC, was using Net Promoter Score,
Yeah,
where
we
you,
need to use that.
we could probably do that, where you ask,
Would you recommend this product
yeah.
or service or town to your friends and
on a scale of 1 to 10, and if it's,
7 or above?
if people are 9 and 10, that means they're a promoter of whatever you're asking. If they're 7 or 8, they're kind of neutral, and if they're 6 and below, they're a detractor. You're like, oh, I wouldn't do that, Matthews, that sucks. So you get a score, and I think I discussed it 2 days, and so like Disney World has like a 77, which is one of the highest net promoter scores in the world. People love Disney World, even though it's very expensive, they have a good time, people are happy, it's clean. Probably don't get the coronavirus if you go there. Yeah, on retail side, Costco is ranked very high, and the very low would be your cable company, the power company, you know, people like that. They have net promoter scores that are like negative or something. So that could kind of give some weight to some of the questions you ask. I mean, I didn't mean to be sarcastic earlier, but I mean to have Dr. Friday come in and go, people want low crime in Matthews. I'm like, okay, thanks. I mean,
Everybody wants that.
you know, we want walkable neighborhoods, okay? You know, I don't think for me, it didn't add a lot of actionable stuff.
Maybe we're off on a tangent, but I do, like multi-use pass or side pass now, I always wonder, like, from a staff standpoint, are we pushing too hard? Are we getting ahead of the board or the community? And I do like the check-ins, like,
That's fair.
okay, yeah,
That's
guess
fair.
what? You know,
That's fair.
it's 2 years later, but people still want to figure out a way to get around this town other than a car. That comforts me, like, okay, keep pushing, you know. Now, staff could argue, look, we can take direction from the board. Board says, yes, we'll do it. Board says, no, but I guess it's kind of more of a reinforcing loop, I guess I'd say. So, but you're right about crime.
That's
and guess
always
what?
a question.
And they're gonna love the fire department.
Yeah.
They love the fire
You think
department.
public safety is important? I mean, who's going to say no? No, absolutely not. I don't think it's important at all. Any question that you read and the answer is, you know, you're like, I'm 99% sure this person can answer this way, then I don't think that question adds any value to the survey.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying there were that many like that, but there were a few that I thought, oh my gosh, how was anybody going to answer this but the obvious way? You know?
So Davidson does do a business retention survey. We asked around to all of our neighbors. They were the only ones who currently do one. They are pretty basic questions of, you know, during the next 1 to 3 years, company expects to expand, employment, sales, customer base. Are you considering plans to relocate either within Davidson or outside of Davidson? Are you having difficulty recruiting qualified employees? So there are basic things that, there's only one question that at the end that basically says, what if anything could we do to make your experience here better? But I don't know if that's the kind of survey that we would be looking for existing businesses, or if we're just completely away from that, or, you know, does that go to what I think Steve had some concerns with of, are we opening up a can of worms? So Davidson has not experienced a can of worms. They've had good, positive feedback from it. But, you know, I don't know.
I think a good net promoter score might be on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely would you be to locate your business in Matthews? Why or why not? Get some feedback.
Yeah, I mean, they said if you were selecting a location for your business today, would you choose the town of Davidson? Out of 167 responses, they had one no.
Well, maybe that was an obvious question. I don't know.
But that, I mean.
No, that was a good question. That was a good question.
Yeah.
I think
But
the
I-
survey could have value if we know what we're gonna do with the data.
I think to Steve's point, is we gathered all this data and then we didn't follow back up with the business owners and we didn't particularly even help them on basic stuff. I think we just kind of said, okay, thanks, and we put it on file.
But having read the Davidson one, there's no
It's not a complaining.
there's no clause in
Yeah.
that one. There's nothing
There's
that.
nothing implied promise.
Yeah.
But it's pretty, and that was where I was going with, would we use that data? Because clearly they're using that to feed, I'm guessing, at least one brochure saying
Yeah.
that Davidson business can grow 20% in the next 5 years, right? So there's bullet points out of each one of those questions that we could use on a brochure or whatever. But as long as we had, if we're gonna go out and do it, other than to say, hey, cool, you guys are doing great, let's,
But the more useful information might be the getting prepared for what's coming, too.
yeah.
So, to wrap up, it sounds like we have, and correct me if I'm wrong, Hazen, you've been taking meticulous notes, but maybe 3 kind of asks for EDAC. The first one is to work with staff, and maybe we can get Jay to come to one of the future meetings or whatever, but to do a soft, small area plan for the Family Dollar, which is a huge undertaking. I mean, that's gonna take a long time, and you're gonna have to consider cats and all that stuff. Second was to reconsider how we might go about attracting some jobs here, i.e. with a small business incubator or something like that. I mean, can we better define that, Hazen?
Can we come back to that one? I mean, I'm with you 100% on number 1, just from conceptually. I want to hear number 3.
Number 3 was have EDAC work with Becky and staff to maybe insert a couple questions into the citizen/business survey.
And could we maybe add, kind of looking, I mean, Davidson's business retention survey, I mean, they can do it, by golly, we can do it. I mean, I guess that would be my
But-
first knee-jerk response. Those almost feel a little bit coupled together.
Well, Becky had a good question. Are we talking still about the one survey for everybody, and we just ask some business questions, or are we talking about a separate survey for businesses? What's the pleasure? of
It
the
sounds like
board?
Davidson does a separate survey.
Yeah, so Davidson's is a completely separate survey.
For current business?
For
Yeah,
current
so it's more
businesses
than
in town,
retention.
so
Do you
it's
guys wanna
considered a
do it?
business retention survey.
I mean,
So-
most of these companies have emails.
So look at the Davidson survey and
Yeah.
see if that's something you could benchmark as a possibility, keeping in mind that you don't want to put opportunity just to complain and get ourselves some hot water and avoid those type of questions.
To your point too, go ahead and ask your question.
I was just gonna say about that incubator, you are going back to that? I think.
No, I don't know.
I think that's just such a huge thing.
It is huge.
I participated in it up in Davidson, and it was, I think it brought in a lot of businesses, some of them which became successful, some of them not, but it was a great draw.
What if we had an event, no. So there's 4 or 5 incubators around, most of them tied with like UNC Charlotte, CPCC has one. What if we had an open house event in Matthews, started at 4, invite those businesses that are in those incubators surrounding here, come down, we're gonna show you downtown, we're gonna show you how easy it is to get started with a business license or whatever you have to do here. And, I mean, obviously I haven't flushed it out.
No, I like that.
But it's like an open house
Big time.
for
Yeah.
guys, all these guys and gals that are gung-ho about entrepreneurship in these business incubators. There's 7 or 8 around us, either
That
tied
sounds
to
like a great idea.
universities and colleges. Bring them down.
Consider something like that, and maybe not laser-focused direction, but I don't want to go back to all those people that ask us, what are we doing to attract jobs here, and say nothing. Well, we're looking at a small area plan, and we're doing a survey, and we're not really doing, EDAC's not focused at all on getting jobs here. I mean, I think we have to say we're doing something. I mean, right?
I think that's an open house. It'll also flush out what
It's not a bad
it is
idea. Yeah.
that doesn't work for businesses coming here.
It's a nice second generational in instead of playing the game of creating an incubator, you go to all those
Yeah.
incubators, you got that guy that's got 3 to 6 months before he's ready to move on, you're catching the ones that are leaving the fold.
I like that idea. That's less of a lift than starting from scratch and doing it.
You need to have a product. In
And
theory,
that
you
could
need
be
to
our-
have two different things.
That could be our fall instead of the
Exactly.
summit. We could do an open house instead of the summit.
The issue that, just to play devil's advocate, the issue that we run into though is folks saying, I'd love to locate my business in Matthews, but I can't find space. We're
Sure, so we
already-
have a
we're
couple
already
of real
here.
estate guys here, there's more than not commercial developer, more commercial real estate guys we could have here. We could-
We listen to them, we offer options. And it could be the honest thing for some of them is, we're not the right place.
Right, right.
And it's okay if they're not in Matthews, if they're in Indian Trail.
Yeah, that's right.
Commercial.
It could be a quad at open house
Well, it could be a
too.
quad then.
And I think the incubator is a great idea. I think we did, some of you guys probably own, and Jim Justice did a great job on that, and dang it, you know, we looked at the medical clinic, it wasn't that big, and it's just a lack of it's like, we need some waterproof building, build a new police department, I'm just
There you
saying.
go.
But, is that the kind of building you can turn into an incubator? That's the stumbling block.
Cash save.
Right.
We take,
Use it at the exit door, pick them up.
We value your time here and appreciate the time we had with you tonight to get some feedback on all these, so thank you very much.
Can I ask one more thing on the board? Can we kind of, for the benefit of EDAC, prioritize these 3 items? What is most important? Because we're still dumping a whole bunch of stuff on them, so what do we want them to go to their
And
next
remember,
meeting?
that was all under number 2 of three things
So-
we're looking at.
What do you think is?
What you just proposed to Hazen, is that number 1, and that number 3 would be number 2, and that number, when it dropped down to number 3. Could you get that?
Yeah, we got it first.
1 to 3 and 2 is, yeah. What's on first?
One is
You wrote it down, didn't you, Hazen?
Well, I have
One is
wrote
three.
down, I wrote down a small area plan, kind of this bare bones concept, realizing it could shift, bringing developers, y'all to kind of vet it. The second one for me was the citizen survey, so I wrote down. Citizen survey,
And we
expand it to
dropped it. I actually dropped
businesses,
it number
and then
three.
maybe have a separate small business survey.
It sounds like the small business plan for Family Dollar area is the least pressing, because it's more long term, right? So,
Yeah.
and probably the most pressing is the citizen survey, because we got to get that rolling pretty quick, right?
I agree.
So maybe we.
I'm a bit confused about the survey. If it was gonna be in the fall, did it have to roll a whole year into the fall again?
So it was going to be in January, but there were some questions on it about the citizens' level of support for the direction of elected officials. So it was brought up that perhaps it was fair to wait until this board had been seated for a year before we were going out and asking
That was the reason.
questions like that. So we brought it to the board a couple months ago and said that we were going to wait until you had essentially been in place for about a year. So late fall, October, November is when we plan.
I guess I didn't remember
distribute
that
it
part.
out to the public. That's okay.
All right, so you guys have some pseudo
We're
kind of
good.
direction?
Yeah.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you very much.